SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yeah, there are other areas also we found that where emotional intelligence can be applied very well, say like conflict resolutions, how to enhance the coping capacities of peoples in organizations, and how to build through social supports for transition and to manage crisis in organizations. So, recently also we developed and published a book chapter in the Routledge Handbook of Psychological Resilience. It just recently published. I published a paper on how to build resilient organizations. So, we have often seen that and out of this global crisis, many organizations are suffering leadership crisis, performance crisis, crisis in terms of retaining talents in their organizations. So, how these organizations will survive or they will vanish? Will they lose their identity in the global market? So, it is also equally important to make organizational resilient. So, how to make organizational resilience, that was the focus of that articles. We have highlighted the role of leadership, creating a climate of trust, collaborations, delegation, etc., through which organization can achieve resilient work climates, and they can very much cope with the crisis. So, similarly, in individual cases also, we can build up the resilient potentialities through training programs, how individual can cope with life crisis. Positive contributory services, say for example, within the class or crosses tutoring, mentoring classroom, school, community service as peer mediator, assistance for poor students, orientation for new students. These are some of the programs one can check out. Say for examples like a few years back, I don't know whether it is there in our system or not, that is called orientation OP. OP is still there in Gymkhana in our system. So, this earlier when this ragging was banned from IIT systems, then we introduced the system introduced a program called orientation programs, where the junior wants to know about the seniors and they interact with each others. But in the process, we also found that there is also is a growing sense of dissatisfaction among newcomers who are joining this OP, what we call orientation program, and they are being mentally harassed. So, then when we propose this concept, there will be no OP, there will be only a common platform in Gymkhana where there will be open welcome ceremony, the junior will welcome the seniors, and that is how they will interact, get to know, and then thereafter they are free to interact with each other. But suddenly there was a huge opposition among the student leaders. Sir, this is a tradition we have developed over years, how can we stop it? And if you do not conduct these orientation programs, there will be depression among newcomers. How they will suffer depression? Sir, there will be less interactions, they will be nobody will come to them, they will not go to anybody. So, is that the only platform that the students will get a chance to interact with you during orientation program? How much time you get for orientation? Maybe 1 hour. Is that enough to know each other? You are catching hold of them during the sports and games. You are catching hold of them during your class hours. You are catching hold of them during other societal activities, like you have a musical society, your dramatic society. There are plenty of platforms where you can exchange, you can interact with each other. But why is the necessity of OP? No. But surprisingly, they say that, sir, you do not know, this is also a platform where the junior can develop their resilience potentialities. How? Sir, when they will be asked tough questions, so they will also try to cope, how to cope with tough situations. So, although it was looking very funny, but anyway, there is a hidden message that is being passed to the juniors. So, but looking at the lighter side of it, we say okay, you can carry on, but never harass mentally them. But similarly, there are many other programs where you can create resilience capacities, like giving them tough job. Okay, you go to a nearby village and build a road. There you can build, you can judge their team spirit, their leadership skills, their coordination skills, etc., etc. So that is why the students often be related to community services. Well, this is in a nutshell that I have developed this overall framework, and in fact, in some of the areas we are working on. However, till date we have not reached at the empirical evidences to validate this model. However, every reader is free to work on this model, and you can apply your thought of observations and build up your own theoretical framework, how EI could be used in the best way to make best use of it in terms of EI outcomes, such as like stress management, health, reducing pressure and conflict, establishing health, well-being, performance, productivity, and the overall effectiveness of individual and organizations. So I would like to all of you to do this task, that you work on this proposed model. You have gone through the whole framework of emotional intelligence and its allied disciplines, and well, you can develop a theoretical frame out of your understanding about emotional intelligence, health and well-being. So this is a small assignments for all of you, those who are taking this course as a study proposal. Well, before concluding the session, let me say something about how we can make most of our emotional experiences, what we call emotional situation, how we can benefit by the help of emotional intelligence. Yeah, when we talk about making the most of emotional experiences, how your emotional experiences has affected you, what kind of lesson one has learned from it, and how that lessons has been beneficial for the growth and development of an individuals, or whether it is students, whether it is parents, whether it is working executives in organizations. A recent research suggests that both positive and negative emotions determine how adaptive we are in our daily lives. There is a very famous scale available in the market also, or in scientific research, a scale called PANAS. This is called the PANAS scale, positive affective and negative affective scale. So this gives an indication of your happy state of your mind. So if you undergo these scales, so how positive and how negative you are, that will reflect. So this scale has a shorter form, also has a longer form. So let me just give you just a slice of it, that if you try this scale also, you can get to know your own status of your positive and negative perspective about your life. Say for examples, take a moment to think of the various events occurred in your life during the last 6 months, and respond how frequently you experience each of the emotions, right. So how you have experienced, like interested, have you experienced it? Never, rarely, sometimes, moderately, quite, frequently, high. If you can rate them on from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that. So then you can categorize and get a score on this. Say for interested, say if I am scoring frequently, yes, 6, I am giving it 6. Distressed, rarely, say for my score is 2. So that means 6, then you can say plus 2, then excited, you can add on your score 5, 6, 7, something like that. So, likewise you can rate each domain, each dimension and get a score for that. How much you have felt guilty. So, that will decide how many errors you have committed in your life, and that is deciding the state of affairs. Are you really living in a state of guilty, and that is killing your inner conscience, etc., etc. Then have been strong. This will say the resilience potential state of your affairs in your life. Then scared, hostile, enthusiastic, proud, irritated, alert, ashamed, inspired, nervous, determined, attentive, easy, active and afraid. So, if you attempt and rate it and then you score it, convert these scores from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 to 6 you can expand and you get a score. The higher the score, better. That is an indication of your positive self. Or you can isolate, there are 50 positive items, 50 negative items. You can categorize them under two categories, positive as well as positive affect and negative affect. So, in this scale there are 10 positive and 10 negatives. So, you can list them like interested, you can put them under positive. So, after doing this you will get to know what is the state of affairs, you are more towards positive affect or more towards negative affect. So, how people make the most of their emotional experience, that is how they handle positive and negative experiences in a manner that leads to positive outcomes. This is the important focus of this lecture here. Then the process of emotion focused coping, emotional intelligence and emotional storytelling will help us to understand how we benefit by engaging in our emotions, how we can learn to process and use emotion laden materials completely. Suppose you have an emotional problem at your residence, or you are suffering from emotional conflict with your spouse or your partners. So, what kind of strategy you are making use of? So, that will decide how successfully you will cope with that situations. Or say for examples, you just escaped from a divorce, you were close to experience a divorce, but you successfully managed. Can that be told to your fellow colleagues who are likely to suffer that kind of situation in organization? Because nowadays the organization situation is such, there is growing level of dissatisfaction among spouses because they are not able to give time to each others, they are not able to focus on their household affairs. So, emotional conflict is growing, the number is on rise. So, that is why emotionally intelligent people are likely to be better cope with these kind of situations. How these success stories could be passed on to the other peoples, and it will act as a coping strategy for them. What happens when we talk about emotion focused coping? This is one of the area that we should focus on in the context of emotional intelligence. Here is a positive psychology, and it is Stanton. She talks about emotion focused coping refers to active movement towards rather than away from stressful encounter. Emotion focused coping does not mean that you avoid that situation. So, you be in the situation and experience and manage effectively. So, people those who avoid, withdraw from this kind of situations are likely to experience failure in the long run. There is another, she differentiates between emotional approach and emotional avoidance, exactly the way that we just discussed, that emotional avoidance is not, it is a short term solutions, but if you engage on emotional dialogue bringing reasoning, that is why we are emphasizing on emotional reasoning, why we are annoyed with each other as friends, as colleagues, as partners. So, that requires a mutual understanding and exchange of ideas and views. So, that is why I also projected on the screen one picture of husband wife fighting on tea tables. So, this is only happening because of emotional misunderstanding, and that has a direct bearing on our neurological systems for both to differ, because we often say that this emotional conflicts creates anger, tension, anxiety that influence the whole nervous systems, bringing negativity in our life. Behavioral activation systems regulates approach, motivation and behavioral inhibitions systems functioning to help us avoid negative events and punishments. So, this is quite natural, also happens in our everyday lives, like behavioral activations. When you are in a excited zones, you are likely to fire at others, but if you are actually taking charge of your emotions, you can sustain better, you can regulate your behavior better. So, that is why behavioral activation theory says that you regulate your behavior towards the motivational direction without getting affected. So, that is how, that means you are avoiding the negative outcome of their behavioral activations. You are excited, somebody has humiliated, how to focus on the task. Like the exact same thing happened to Zidane. He was playing exceptionally so well, the whole French team was in the verge of winning the World Cup, but his direction, his focus was diverted in such a way, he engaged in so negative actions and he was thrown out of it. Researchers identified two related and distinct processes involved in approach oriented emotion focused coping. Approach oriented is always bringing achievement of goals, but if you avoid the situations, that will may divert you from achievement of the actual goals. In the sense, means avoidance goals is a shortcut to success. It cannot hold you for longer time. You are just looking for shortcut, but you are exercising your energy and abilities when you are making use of approach goals, approach focused. So, that is the difference between approach and avoidance. You are just not making use of your actual opinion or perspectives into positions. So, researchers identified two related but distinct processes involved in approach oriented emotion focused coping. They are emotional processing and emotional expression. This is what exactly I was trying to. When you are focusing on approach oriented base, you are trying to utilize all the nuts and bolts of the possibilities of solutions. So, that is why emotional processing, you are trying to process your emotional reactions, emotional intentions, reasoning, etc., etc., and then you are expressing your emotion in the right directions. But when there are two people are in conflict, you say, no, they both are my friend, I should not enter into their business, let me go this way. So, here you are not displaying your emotional intelligence, rather you should have gone there and held them out by bringing some reason why they are emotionally involved in conflict. A researcher on cancer patients revealed that emotion focused coping helped in psychological distress, had fewer medical ailments and appointments also, because those people who are very solid emotion focused coping mechanisms, they hardly report to doctors with their diseases. And undergraduate population dealing with a parent's psychological or physiological illness coped better with their stressor. So, it has also been observed among the student population also. So, those students who are more focused on problem focused or coping styles, they are likely to survive or sustain illness than others. So, that is why some people or psychologists, they wanted to incorporate emotional intelligence into their intervention programs. Some researchers suggest that emotional intelligence can be learned and strengthened, while others claim it is an inborn characteristics. As you also that when the mother extend towards extend her arms towards the newborn baby, and the baby equally gives a smile and comes forward. So, looking at that state of affairs, we often say that it is inborn, but actually in reality we have seen that even people those who are low in their emotional intelligence can develop their emotional intelligence by training, by exposure, by learning, etc. So, the role of emotions like emotional processing, even in personality effects, mood effects, etc., types of emotions, primary emotion, negative emotions, we have already discussed about this. So, let us go further about how emotional intelligence can be developed, like nature versus nurture principles we have already discussed, but let me just recapitulate briefly that the nature aspects refers to our genetic aspects or the hereditary aspects, but the nurture refers to our training, our education, socializations, etc. So, since emotional intelligence is more of interpersonal in nature, so nurture matters here more than the nature impact in the development of emotional intelligence. Like recognition of multiple intelligence, even the growth of emotional intelligence can be traced back to the multiple theory of intelligence, where Howard Gardner tries to talk about intrapersonal and interpersonal intelligence. So, intelligence as a cognitive mental ability, although has been conceptualized to help us to understand or provide a base for reason, but human emotions are so complex, it is very difficult to reason out, but rather to understand the state of affairs that where culture, our social interactions and the person in contact matters a lot. So, that is why the whole interpersonal process is very important to understand. So, this framework of emotional intelligence has been derived from the hardcore emotions, how there are different dimensions have emerged out of this concept of emotional intelligence. So, starting from the emotional self-awareness, emotional expression, awareness of others, which gives rise to emotional reasoning, and that helps us managing our emotions, emotional management of others, because when you develop an understanding of managing emotions of yours, and then you develop displaying empathy towards others, and as a result you develop a sense of control at the time of emotional turmoil. So, all these competencies or abilities have affected the decision making process, performance and behavior as a whole. So, this is one of the scale that we are talking about. The Wong's emotional intelligence scale is based on self-report measures, has 4 dimensions. It talks about emotional appraisal and expression of emotions in self and self, then appraisal and recognition of emotion in others, regulation of emotion in the self, and use of emotion to facilitate performance. In addition, there is another method what we call sociometry. This can be also a tool for measuring one's emotional intelligence. Sociometry, it is a very simple method. Even I used to do this small exercise while talking about self and personality in the class. What do you know about yourself? So, let us know about who is the best or the most popular person in this class. So, simply you ask, can you write down the person whom you know on the basis of your ratings, like 1, 2, 3, please select 3 persons that you know best. So, on the basis of socialization, their interaction, friendship, etc., people will name each other. So, out of that we can find out who is the best person. But when I ask people what is the basis of putting somebody on the popular note that he is number 1, number 2, no, sir, I get along with this person, my understanding is better, I clicks well, I can share, I can care about him. So, all these hidden characteristics or understanding indicate towards emotional intelligence. So, that is why Laura theory of socio-emotional selectivity theory says that as we grow, we develop the ability to focus more on positives around us rather than on negatives. So, therefore, we are able to appreciate these benefits in our advanced years, because we come to realize that we have certain amount of life left. So that's why in this small world that we live for a short span, so it's always better to be good towards others instead of fighting with each other, comparing each others, downsizing somebody. I am really great, you cannot be compared with me. So this kind of comparison always brings hatred, meanness to our living. So that's why Laura focuses on that. It's always better to have a positive perspective about your life, and that will create a good positive atmosphere for our future. Young and older people differ in the way they manage emotion laden materials. It has been seen that older are better in managing emotional turmoil situation than the younger, because experience matters a lot. Younger participants attend to negative images more quickly, whereas older participants oriented faster to images laden with positive emotions. This is exactly when I given an example that you respect a person who has humiliated you in front of others. How do you react? Many people say, sir, I will not leave. I will also react in the same way. Some people say, I will, sir, forgive and forget. Some people say, sir, I will come back fast, I will bounce back faster. Some people say, sir, I will stay for a while, then I will react. But see, these are four different ways of reacting. But I used to find people, those who are experienced and little bit older in their age, they have a positive aspect than the younger who have a very reactive approach towards the situations. So, and this is exactly also here Laura has find the same pattern of findings in terms of emotional situations. One study discovered that older participants were more able to savor positive experiences for longer period of time than younger participants. Exactly, I asked the young students in the class, so how long you remember your birthday celebrations? You cannot imagine, maximum 1 or 2 days, then thereafter everything comes. And that is how the young population do not value much about the positive things that happens. But yes, then when I ask, you had a fight yesterday in the tennis court with your friends, how long it is going to last? Sir, I don't know, it may last for a month, week, maybe a year. So that shows how weak these young guys are there when the emotional negative experience of negative emotions comes to them. Another one is, we can assess one's emotional state of affairs, whether it is health, illness or happiness. We can also assess the status of resilience, optimism, reality testing. These are certain characteristics also we can observe from one's storytelling. This is what is called the Pennybaker paradigm, a mode of processing intense negative emotions. In study, writing about a traumatic or a non-emotional topic continuously for 4 days without regard to the spelling, grammar and sentence structure. You ask, please note down what is happening during the last 4 days. You will find tremendous emotional experiences. Same thing like what happens in the Titanic events, or even if you can relate the Bollywood movies like what happens in the border, and that is now happening after 70 years of separations. What is happening between India and Pakistan? We are not yet able to forget our negative impacts. India has moved on, but Pakistan has not. So, yeah. So, it summarizes that through storytelling methods, we can release our pent-up emotions also. When you share the fight between, say for as a wife, you had fight with your husband. As a friend, you had a fight with your other friends. So, when you express the same incidents with others, you will be able to release your tension. Then your friend will come forward with emotional solace. Please don't mind, we are here with you, nothing will go wrong with you anymore, we will help you out. So this is how we release our tension, anxiety and stress, and that is how we establish our emotional stability. What we call another also, otherwise we call it emotional stability, or this is another sign of one's emotional intelligence. And storytelling, emotional storytelling plays a very important role. This is one of the small exercise, like even you can ask people to write a small exercise on expression of gratitude. Expression of gratitude. Please write a letter to your parents. Please write a letter to your parents, by expressing your gratitude. That will show under what conditions your parents have brought up, what is their contribution. The realization of that contribution will create a very positive frame of mind, and thereafter you will feel, oh my God, your parents are so elated, so happy, and then they in return they will immediately call you beta hamara bada ho gaya, in Hindi, typical Hindi, our son has grown up. And that shows the real emotional intelligence development within a person, bringing all sort of health, happiness and prosperity, what we call the positive frame of life. So if you take up this exercise, identify most emotional intelligent person in your friends group, describe how your friend deals with daily life in an emotional intelligent way, write at least 2 events. So as a teacher, if you carry on this kind of exercise from time to time, you will get to know there is a growing state of emotional intelligence within your students. Thank you very much. Let's conclude this session and let's call it a day. Good day.